Biden was in Oklahoma today to commemorate the 100th anniversary of the Tulsa massacres. He is the first president to take part in a ceremony to mark the massacre that wiped out the thriving Greenwood district, also known as Black Wall Street. President Biden's visit to Tulsa, Oklahoma highlights what had been a little-known story of racial violence 100 years ago.
Atlanta has a similar story here, and like Tulsa, Atlanta's early 20th century racial violence has been a historical footnote. 11 Alive's Doug Richards takes a look for us.
The flashpoint for the violence in 1906 was here, in a part of downtown now mostly occupied by Georgia State University. Back then, they described it as a riot, but it really wasn't.
This was a surprise attack on the black community. This wasn't a riot as much as it was a massacre.
One backdrop was politics. In 1906, Georgia's governor's office was up for election. Candidate Hoke Smith published the Atlanta Journal. Candidate Clark Howell published the then competing Atlanta Constitution. As the election approached, each newspaper published incendiary headlines that stoked racial fears among white readers.
There were a series of 4 particular reports in local Atlanta papers, both the Journal and the Constitution at the time, saying that black men were actually sexually assaulting white women when there was no record of it. But that was enough to get a mob ensued, and it started not too far from where we are. And then from that point, we have 3 days of violence.
History scholar King Williams thinks the government should post markers downtown where the violence raged in 1906.
The crowd grew bigger and bigger as they walked up.
Officially taking 26 lives, but Williams says was likely more than 100. Hoke Smith won the governor's race. The violence provoked by the newspapers receded into history.
I would guess maybe 90% of the people in the city and the state don't know about this. I wish more people knew about it.
The 1906 violence reshaped Atlanta. Black communities moved from here to points south and west of here. And the business community, it relocated to Auburn Avenue.
Reflecting on the events like those in Tulsa and here in Atlanta, bringing the reparations argument to the forefront. For decades, victims and descendants of the Tulsa massacre have called for reparations. With Democrats in power now in Washington, D.C., the issue is being seriously debated and studied.
Victims of this atrocity have been denied justice for far too long.
This ability to transfer resources across generations makes a huge difference in whether one is able to acquire wealth or not.
Wealth is built over the generations, so the destruction of homes and businesses added to the wealth gap and stopped descendants of victims from potentially building on the wealth of their ancestors. Forsyth County is often brought up in these reparations talks. Black families were violently forced out in 1912, losing their land and, for some, their lives. Though it was a mostly white agrarian community, hundreds of black families were thriving in the area at the time until they were driven out of Forsyth County.
They were forced to leave. Their property was burned, homes burned, everything that they weren't able to gather on a wagon and save was lost.
Descendants Elon Osby said that she is thankful for what the county has done so far, but wants more discussion about what families here lost not so long ago.